mid-2000s, I was subcontracting for a local accountant at a sign maker's in my nearby town, just for 5 hours a week, in between school hours, and I did this for about 4 years. And I used to go there and raise the sales invoices, process the purchase invoices, complete the bank reconciliation, and at the end of the day, I would provide the business owner with his debtors and creditors report, send a profit and loss and trial balance over to the accountant, and that was me done. Now, one of the invoices I was processing was the accountant's, and I could very clearly see what he was charging me out for, £35 an hour. My invoice to him was for £12.50 an hour. Now, you may think he was doing other things in those 5 hours that he was charging out for, but he wasn't. He was charging on top for anything he did for compliance and tax and any conversations he had with the business owner. So the business owner could see the value that I was giving at £35 an hour. The accountant saw my value at £35 an hour, but I didn't see the value. I thought I was worth £12.50 an hour.
When I started my bookkeeping practice and I was taking on my first clients, I didn't know what to charge. So I did what I think everyone who needs the answer to a question does, and I went onto Google and I typed in bookkeepers in Bristol. What I found from the results for anyone who was actually sharing their prices on their website was that I could probably be charging anywhere between £10 an hour and £30 an hour. It didn't actually make sense for me to charge £10 an hour. I decided that wasn't a viable business option. But as an accountant, I thought, well, I should be near the top end of that. But I also felt like I just don't have the experience to charge it, so I'll go in with £25 an hour. Now, I can remember having a conversation with the prospect, and I think I probably gulped when I quoted him £25 an hour. But he said yes, and I felt really lucky and fortunate that I was able to charge that. And I was like, yes, I've nailed this pricing thing. So we want to talk to you about why accountants charge more than bookkeepers. And what we're going to do during this session is share with you the results of a pricing survey which we ran within our community to understand what people are charging for different services. We're going to talk to you about why we think accountants are charging more. And we're going to talk about why bookkeepers could charge more, because you might be a bookkeeper here in the audience thinking, well, hang on a minute, who are all these accountants that can charge more and why is that?
So me and Zoe run the Figure Bookkeepers Club, a free community for bookkeepers and accountants who want to be unapologetically ambitious. They want to build a business that creates flexibility and whatever that they desire. And we, over the last couple of years, have made the assumption that maybe bookkeepers and accountants charge more when they see that they feel they have that perceived value. The more value that they feel they're giving, they charge more.
And this is an example of one of the posts that went up in our Facebook community. So within our group, there's about 10,000 members now. And people will go into that group and they'll ask questions. They know it's a supportive community. They're going to get helpful answers. So they'll ask questions about anything about running their bookkeeping practices. But we often get posts about pricing. I don't know if you can see the detail of this one, but somebody shared a job ad that they'd seen. So someone was looking for some part-time bookkeeping support. They had very specific requirements about what they wanted from that bookkeeper, the kind of tools, they said they need to have used Shopify and they need to have this much experience. And it's a part-time role and we're going to pay £15 an hour. Now, the lady who shared this in the group obviously was a little bit shocked that she maybe thought £15 was a bit low. And her post says, I saw this, mouth dropped, puzzled face, thoughts along the lines of, send it to my people so they can gasp with me. So she was expecting people to say, well, can't believe it, £15, that's not enough. But actually, this post really divided our community. So these are some of the comments that we had, and this went on for days. So people were saying things along the lines of, well, actually, I don't think £15 is that bad. I'd be quite pleased if I could get that. Someone saying, who are the people out there who are charging £35 an hour? Who's actually paying £35 an hour? somebody said, I quoted £30 an hour to one of my prospects, and they said, well, I don't even earn £30 an hour myself. Then there were people saying it's a regional thing. It depends on where you are in the country, what you can charge. And also, the business drives what it is that they can pay for bookkeeping. So lots of different views about what bookkeeping was actually worth. This was our favourite. Even Lidl pays £14 an hour.
So this sparked a lot of interest for me and Zoe about what is going on. Is it a mindset thing? Is it a self-belief thing? What's going on? So we thought we would do a pricing survey in our community. And the questions we asked quite a few questions, but the ones we're going to talk about today are, if you were to quote an hourly rate, what would you charge? And what is the minimum you would charge per month for the bookkeeping for a limited company? We also asked questions about tax returns, payroll, and advisory.
And we also asked some qualitative questions because we wanted to get a sense of how people felt about their pricing. Our goal, though, wasn't to come here and talk to you about why accountants charge more than bookkeepers. Our goal was to understand what is the going rate for bookkeeping.
So let's start off by introducing you to some of our community. There's quite a few of you in the audience today, and thank you for joining us. But our community is online, and so it's worldwide. But the UK community is all different types of backgrounds. People have found bookkeeping at certain points in their life. Not many people sit in that careers lesson at school, put up their hand and say, I want to be a bookkeeper when they grow up. Bookkeeping finds them at different points in their life, maybe due to childcare, maybe health, maybe caring for somebody, just flexibility. Maybe you've worked in accountancy and now you want to set up on your own in practice. So the background of our bookkeepers that we have surveyed are very varied, and they all come to find bookkeeping for very different reasons. So we wanted to test some assumptions, because we also felt, me and Zoe, that the people that had more support were charging more. They also felt that they had better perceived value than people that were maybe on their own, like I was back in the 2000s, where the only person that I was subcontracting for was an accountant, and I was kind of letting him lead what my value was. So we thought maybe people with more support, like-minded community, would see themselves as having more value and therefore charge more.
We also thought that accountants would charge more. Thinking back to my thoughts when I was looking at prices on Google, I'm an accountant, so I should be able to charge more. Is that actually true? Are accountants charging more? So thinking about that community that Joe's described, the different people who are in our group, we had lots of responses to the survey. We are obviously in the UK, most of our community is in the UK, but we also work with people in the States, Australia, South Africa. All sorts of people had responded to that survey. We actually decided to disregard all of the responses from overseas because we couldn't really benchmark them against one another. So the first sample that we took when we looked at the results to the survey was for the UK-based community. Then we were able to break it down into bookkeepers and accountants. And we also asked people whether they were part of our membership. So we work with some bookkeepers and accountants to support them in growing their businesses. We coach them, we train them, help them understand about business development. Mainly those people are bookkeepers, but it does overlap into accountancy as well. So we have some accountants in that group too. So we wanted to see how the membership actually replied to those questions. And then within that, we also wanted to understand whether bookkeepers in our membership were charging more than the general population of bookkeepers. So we went into those 5 different levels, and we had these 5 different groups when we were looking at the results.
So what is the going rate for bookkeeping? When we did the sample, and we asked, if you were to quote an hourly rate, what would you charge? Because actually we aren't advocates of the hourly rate. So we know that some people might be charging on a monthly basis and had to kind of work out what is their hourly rate. And the range was from £20 an hour up to £165 an hour. The lowest was from a bookkeeper and the highest was from an accountant. So on average, the mean that we found out was that bookkeepers in our total community were charging £28 an hour. Our members, so bookkeepers in our membership, so they had more support, more like-minded people that they were meeting with more frequently, were charging £40 an hour.
That proved for us that assumption that we had, are bookkeepers who get more support able to charge more than people who are doing it alone?
And then the accountants were coming out at £54 an hour for bookkeeping. So again, our assumption was correct that accountants charge more than bookkeepers.
But we thought that there was probably more in that data. We didn't think that was the full story. So these are the actual responses. So 98 people replied to that question about if you had to charge an hourly rate, what would you charge? And the numbers that are in the regular text, I don't know how well you can see this, but the numbers which are in regular text are from bookkeepers. The numbers which are in a bold text are accountants. And the ones which are overlaid with a pink highlight, those are members of our community. So you can see, one thing that's just glaringly obvious to me seeing it now on the big screen is that actually all of those ones right at the top are people not in our membership who are charging the lowest fees. That's quite interesting in terms of that average. But when we really thought about, well, what do these numbers tell us, there were a few things we were thinking. The first was, hang on a minute, is £20 really the minimum that anyone's actually charging? And we've got to remember where we put this survey. So we sent this survey out to our mailing list and we posted it in the Figure Bookkeepers Club. That's our free online community for bookkeepers and accountants as well who are growing their businesses. Now, those people are already part of a community who are hearing, you are worth more. We're telling them all the time, you're worth more, charge more. So we felt like maybe the people who were charging less than £20 didn't want to answer, or they didn't want to say that when they answered the survey. Maybe they didn't answer the survey, or maybe they weren't captured by that survey because they just weren't part of the community. I think if you did that survey in this room, maybe you would get a different result, or maybe those people aren't here. Maybe they don't come to conferences. So, we think it's lower, and that conversation you saw in the Facebook group shows that there are people who are quite comfortable charging £15 an hour. So that was the first one. What we also saw was the most frequently quoted hourly rate is £25 an hour. So 27 people responded to say that they were at the £25 an hour mark. So that kind of fitted with what I'd Googled. So 37% of people were charging £25 an hour or less. And actually, if you take it a bit further, more than half of the responses were £30 an hour or less. So our averages aren't really representative of the kind of numbers that we're seeing in this survey. And what you'll also see is that right at the bottom, we've got all of these people who are saying, well, if I had to charge an hourly rate, I'd charge £100 or more. Those were all from accountants. Whether accountants are actually quoting that in real life and being paid that in real life, who knows? So the things we learned from this question in our survey is, well, bookkeepers are charging less than accountants. We think the numbers have got an uplift because of the community that we're a part of, and more than half of the sample are charging £30 or less, and actually there are probably people charging less than £20.
But like we said, we're not fans of charging by the hour. If you're going to swap time for money, you're not going to be able to build a profitable business that you can leave, go on holiday, be sick, or anything like that, and create that leverage and create that kind of business with the flexibility and freedom that we all require and want. So we don't advocate that. So that's why we asked this other question. For monthly bookkeeping, what is the minimum you charge per month for bookkeeping for a limited company? And the range was much bigger, from £20 to £500 a month. Now, just to caveat that, the £20 an hour, £20 per month was a bookkeeper who had a limited company where they did 1 hour's bookkeeping a month. So that just gives you a context. And the 500 was also a bookkeeper in our community.
And I think it's worth just saying as well that this is a really broad question. Like, we never expected to come and talk about these results here. So, we've never run this survey before. We just wanted to get a feel for what are people charging, so we could read some of the comments and understand what the real challenges were. So, people are going to answer this in their own way based on what they think that service looks like.
So on average, a bookkeeper in our free community was charging £151 a month for limited company bookkeeping services. And a bookkeeper in our membership was charging £183 a month. And that's a 20% uplift. So again, saying that those bookkeepers that have that support and that community, they do charge more.
So we wanted to look at the numbers again. We wanted to understand what this really looked like. So again, like in the last table, anything in regular text is a bookkeeper, anything in bold is an accountant, anything highlighted pink is a member of our community. And there's a real range here. You know, people are charging all sorts of different fees, and I think that just shows how different bookkeeping can look between different business owners. Interestingly, though, I love this, right at the bottom here, these top fees that are charged, and actually even that £400 over there, they're all bookkeepers. All bookkeepers are charging the top fees here. This is their minimum monthly fee for bookkeeping. The most frequently quoted monthly price was £100. So I wonder if there's a bit of a kind of finger on the air, oh, it's £100. You know, I don't know. But that was interesting to just see that trend there as well.
So then something else that was very interesting, the accountants that responded for monthly bookkeeping was less. It was 129. So we found that very interesting and wondered, do accountants see less value in bookkeeping?
So these are some of the comments, and we didn't ask this question, you know, we weren't looking for this, but when you go back to this post that we had about the £15 an hour, anecdotally, some of the comments were, well, actually, maybe accountants do value the bookkeeping aspect of what they do less. So a few people were talking about subcontracting and working with accountants, and quite often you'll come to these events and you'll be told, like, your route to market as a bookkeeper is team up with an accountant and they'll find you the work, and, you know, that will help you to grow your business. But these bookkeepers are saying, well, I don't want to do that because I've tried working with an accountant and they wanted to pay me £12 an hour. And there's someone else who said when I worked it out, they were going to pay me £9 an hour. I can't work for that. So maybe that, I mean, anecdotally, there's only 2 quotes there, but is it that accountants are valuing the bookkeeping part less?
Or is it, I think, that it's a different service? Accountants are charging their bookkeeping out for the data processing, whereas bookkeepers are seeing it more as a full service and adding the conversations with their clients, holding them accountable and talking about their goals, whereas accountants might be charging that through compliance and tax. And it's just split up differently, invoiced differently, so therefore we're all coming at it with a bit of a different viewpoint.
And what we also wondered is it actually that bookkeepers are finally getting the message that they are specialists at bookkeeping? You know, accountants aren't necessarily specialists at the bookkeeping part. They do other things that add value. The bookkeepers really help with streamlining, systemizing, knowing which processes, which software is going to be right for this type of client. And bookkeepers are finally saying, well, hey, yeah, I am a specialist and I need to charge more because I know that I'm valuable in this particular niche. So these are the bottom couple of rows of data, and you know, I highlighted that these are all bookkeepers, but actually even in those 18 results that there are only 4 accountants in there quoting, and that's the top, you know, that's from £250 up to £500, so that's like half of the prices if you were to list them out. So it's the bookkeepers who are charging at the top end for monthly bookkeeping as a service.
So what enables them to charge more? And we really think it's about getting out from behind the computer, using the numbers to have conversations with the business owners, telling them what you're seeing in the numbers, and then asking the business owner, what do you want to achieve in your business? How can I help support you? How can I help you streamline processes? What do you need support with? Do you need support with credit control? Can I help you with your payment systems? These are the conversations that bookkeepers are starting to have, which are adding so much more value to the business owner. And we are thinking that bookkeepers are starting to see for themselves that this is such a valuable service. And I think what it is as well, bookkeepers are starting to see themselves as business owners. And once they realise if they can run a successful business, they can share all of that knowledge with their business owner clients too. So why do accountants charge more than bookkeepers then? You know, when we went back to the hourly rate at the beginning. And really, you know, like I said earlier, no one chooses really at school to be a bookkeeper, but you would choose to go straight into accountancy. And I remember being about 19 and being an audit senior and being charged out at £75, £80 an hour in a traditional business, bricks and mortar. And so I had that understanding that if I was going to start an accountancy practice, I would have had a rough idea of what my charge out rate should be. But not many people have been employed by a bookkeeping practice, because there's usually people are on their own at home running bookkeeping practices for themselves. So bookkeepers don't have that benchmark to go against. And accountants, you go down a high street, you will see accountancy practices, bricks and mortar, and we don't have that. So as well, we are compromising, so we feel we have to compromise on price because maybe we're compromising with flexibility, with our working hours, because we're juggling other things, and maybe our bookkeeping practice isn't a full-time bricks and mortar business. And also accountants, do higher level of education, so they come out knowing that they've got that higher level of education. But bookkeepers do get qualified and do lots of hours, but we've just got to see where is the value. But bookkeepers do sometimes lack self-belief. So we believe these are the reasons why accountants charge more than bookkeepers.
And we've been talking about self-belief, and we wanted to try and test this in some way in our survey. The question that we asked was, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not very confident and 5 being really confident, how confident are you that you could go into a sales pitch and win the work? So the results that we got were this. Bookkeepers were coming out at 3.2. Bookkeepers who are members of our community were a little bit higher at 3.5, and accountants were a bit higher again at 3.6 out of 5. And of course, we love numbers, so we decided we'd put it on a graph. And if you remember back at the beginning, we had this graph where we were comparing for you the perceived value of what you do against the price you're able to charge. And I think this really shows the same kind of graph on the screen. These are the real life numbers. So you can really see from this, the people who are saying, yeah, 5 out of 5, I would definitely win that client if I went on a sales call. They're charging the highest prices. They're the people who believe that they can. Right at the bottom, the people who really lack the confidence, those people are charging the lowest prices. I mean, there's this interesting one here in the middle where someone's like, well, I'm going to charge more than £150. I don't really know whether I'm going to win the work or not. And maybe that's why they've scored themselves as a 3. And then we thought we'd break it down into the different groups that we'd surveyed. So this pink line here, these are the bookkeepers in our community. So you can see, regardless of how confident they are that they're going to win the work, they're still tracking this sort of £25 an hour-ish. Whether they know they're going to get it or not, they're stuck around that £25 an hour mark because that's what they potentially have decided, that's what their bookkeeping is worth. Then the bookkeepers who are working with us in our membership have got more confidence. So as they get more confident, their prices are going up. And then accountants are just off the chart. they just know they can. We think seeing is believing. We think being part of a community, whether it's having worked in practice, having worked with people who can lead the way, show you what this is worth because you're seeing the invoices like Joe was, or because you're part of a community where you're listening to conversations where people are saying, well, this is what I'm charging, what would you do in this situation? That shows you that, well, actually, if they can do that, I'm the same. Why can I not do that? Seeing is believing. Seeing and having that support around you can really help you push your prices. So here's how we think you can charge more. So if you're a bookkeeper here and you're thinking why are these accountants charging so much? What do I need to do? The first thing is you have to remember you're different to everybody else. That your experiences, your knowledge, your training, your specialisms, they make you different. You can't compare yourself on price. If you compare data entry that you do on price to someone else who's also doing data entry, you're always going to lose the work to somebody else who can do it for cheaper. There will always be someone cheaper. You have to embrace that you're different and unique in some way and show that that's valuable to your clients. You've got to understand the value you create. Sometimes that's about getting other people to tell you. I think we don't always notice this for ourselves. Ask your clients, what has this enabled you to do? That will help you to see what a difference you're actually making, the transformation you're making for your clients. Have conversations, get out from behind your computer. You've done the data entry, great, it looks great, honestly. But now you've got to talk to your clients about it. So what do they need to know? What are the challenges they're facing in their business and in their life? And how do you have the data at your fingertips to actually help them to get through that? Benchmark yourself against other people. What are they doing differently from me? Who else is like me? Who is different? Why are they different? And what are they charging? What do their services look like? What can I learn from them? Get out from behind your computer.
So I find this really interesting. So this basically shows that if you undervalue yourself as well, then your clients will undervalue you. It's a bit like you're going to a friend's birthday party and you think, oh, I'm going to buy them a bottle of wine. And you go into a shop and you look across, and we always perceive that the highest priced bottles of wine are going to taste better and they're going to be better value. And unfortunately, it is the same in our business. We all know somebody that charges a lot more than us, and we look back and we think, are they really giving that much value? So unfortunately, if you don't value yourself, no one else is going to do that for you. So your clients will also, they do think if you've come in cheaper than other people, they're going to think that the value you're providing is less.
We hope that's got you thinking about your pricing and maybe something that you can do differently in terms of understanding your value.